Hello, and thank you for your interest in IncentViz, the sales performance and commission management system for CloudSuite Industrial, Infor's best-in-class manufacturing solution for small and mid-sized companies. IncentViz has everything an organization using Infor's CloudSuite Industrial, or as we like to call it, CSI, will need to build sales plans, establish and assign quotas to agents, monitor sales performance against those quotas, and then generate and make payments, whether they be commissions for internal employees or royalties for vendors or even rebates for customers. My name is Marty Rhodes, and I'll be your host for this short overview and demo of IncentViz from Single Source Systems. We'll start with a short PowerPoint presentation and discuss the IncentViz story, explain the setup and primary data elements that are shared between CSI and IncentViz, and then I'll provide a brief demo of the primary flow and features of the software. Now, IncentViz was built out of necessity. Although CSI is able to generate commission records using a simple commission calculation formula, most organizations have more complex needs and require a more sophisticated solution to manage their annual sales plans, their individual quotas, track sales performance, and ultimately manage the commission payments that are due or have been paid. And IncentViz was built to provide a direct conduit between all of these requirements and work transparently with Infor's CloudSuite Industrial application. Now, IncentViz was also created to address the needs of three primary roles within the organization: the sales manager or managers, sales agents, and the accounting staff that would be responsible for calculating and paying commissions. So let's look at the challenges that each of these different roles face. We'll start with the sales managers. The sales managers are typically responsible for building sometimes complex annual or quarterly sales plans, and then they have the responsibility of breaking these sales plans into individual quotas, and then ultimately they need to define the commission calculations for these quotas. Now, unfortunately, within CSI, there's no real integrated tracking of sales performance that aligns from top to bottom, from the sales plan through the quota to the commission and ultimately the payment. So for most organizations, and therefore the sales manager, sales performance and commission management is done in spreadsheets, which is typically or can be error prone and also time consuming to manage. Now, the benefit of IncentViz is that it provides a framework to establish these incentive plans and connect them to the quotas and commission calculations and payments, so that the sales managers can easily monitor the sales performance, but also ensure that the data quality is maintained from top to bottom. Now, what do these spreadsheet-based systems do for the sales agents? Well, unfortunately, it creates distrust in the system, and also the time necessary to create the commissions and track performance can result in reporting delays. And in most cases, we found commonly that sales agents usually end up creating their own spreadsheets to track their personal performance and the commissions that they're due. Now, again, the benefits gained by implementing IncentViz with CSI is that it provides that framework for both sales management and the sales force to manage the sales plans, the quotas, the commissions, and payments. And it also significantly increases the data quality due to the direct database connection between IncentViz and CSI. And it provides both management and the sales agent real-time details that reflect sales performance, as well as the commissions paid or to be paid, which improves the trust of the sales force. And for the accounting folks, you may already know this, but these spreadsheet-based systems can take multiple days to manipulate and prepare the commission payments. And unfortunately, again, due to manual manipulation, this can be somewhat error-prone. So with the inherent approval process built into IncentViz, the process of commission preparation, the review and approval of payments is reflected in a separation of duties between sales management and accounting. And this allows for real-time maintenance of the sales and commission data that may be needed, that may require adjustments for either quota credits or payments that are due. And for the accounting department, taking a more systematic approach will save time, significantly increases the data quality, and also provides full transparency between accounting and the sales force, and building also building a database of the historical activity. Now, this is just a screenshot of the login of the application. The IncentViz application is a cloud-based solution, and it's hosted on Microsoft Azure. Now, Microsoft, as you may know, probably spends billions of over $1 billion a year annually on cybersecurity. So rest assured, the application and your data will be protected. And in addition, Single Source uses a secured socket layer between IncentViz and CSI to protect that native integration and the passing of the data between the systems. Now, if we look at the implementation process for IncentViz, it's very easy and straightforward. First, we create an IncentViz tenant in the cloud. And within that tenant, we will create a company and also create an initial administrative user on the company's behalf. We'll then enable and validate the native connection with Infor CloudSuite Industrial. And then we will help do some of the initial configuration. So we're going to configure the codes. These codes might be custom data fields defined within CSI. There may be some information within CSI that's not standard, but is unique to the organization. We can absolutely use this custom data and pull that into IncentViz. We're also going to create the people who will be the users of the system, but also those roles that we talked about a little bit already. We're going to create salespersons, sales managers, vendors, customers, teams, and that is really kind of provides the foundation to build out the rest of the system or configure the rest of the system. Now, to wrap up the configuration and the testing, we'll actually assist with the setup of your sales plans and help verify that the formulas for the quota credits, the commissions, and the payments are accurate. And at that point, after formal testing of the system, you can begin generating and processing incentive payments. Now, if we look at some of the data that's being shared by Infor CSI, these are the primary data elements that come over from the CloudSuite application. We're going to receive into IncentViz details on the salesperson. We're going to receive detailed information about the customers, customer address, their ship to information, their credit terms. Anything that's customer related is going to come over from CSI. We're also going to receive sales orders and their line item detail. We're also able to process service orders for organizations that have a service department. So we can process the service orders and that line item detail. The items from the item master, the product catalog, are going to come over, including information like price and cost, so that margin could be calculated depending on the value or the formula that's used to calculate the commission payment. We're going to receive over invoices and invoice line detail, and finally, as I mentioned previously, those code fields, which are referred to as custom class fields within the application. And many companies have special fields that they use to reflect how what data qualifies to earn quota credit that again may not be stored natively in the CSI application. And some of those fields could also be used for commission calculation. So any of those custom fields can definitely be integrated and moved on a real-time basis into the IncentViz application. Now, IncentViz uses this framework, and it's also going to, or structure, and it's going to be the basis for what I will be demoing. So we're going to start by looking at an already defined sales plan, and these sales plans can be defined annually, quarterly, or monthly. We are then going to, once a sales plan is defined, we assign people to that plan. And again, the people can be internal or external agents. They could be customers that receive rebates. It could be contractors or vendors that earn royalties. So we're going to assign people to a particular incentive plan. And the people is somewhat of an abstract term. For each of these people, we then establish a quota to set a sales or performance incentive goals. And that can be, we'll see in the demo that can be unique to a particular individual. And once their quota is established, or what the goal is, that incentive goal, then we're going to determine if a transaction occurs, how much credit are they going to get to that or get for that. So we establish what the credit calculation is going to be, or earning value really is what a quota credit means. And then the quota payment is the actual formula. So given quota credit earned, a formula is then applied for the ultimate payout or the commission that is earned for that quota credit. So now let's take a look at the software. I'm simply setting on, I'm using Chrome browser, and I've gone to the IncentViz website, and I'm presented with a login panel. So I'm just going to log in. And now, as I mentioned earlier, the application has three primary roles. The three primary roles that use the IncentViz application, again, are the sales manager, the sales agents, and accounting. And I'm going to start out with acting as the sales manager. Now, when I was set up within IncentViz, I was set up as a super user. So I have access to all of the screens and the capabilities of all three of these different roles. When a user is established within IncentViz, they're giving usually one, maybe if they are a super user, they would be giving a more broader range of responsibilities or permissions within the system. But this is all user definable and can be restricted down to the individual user level. But for demonstration purposes here, I've given myself super user rights so I can move freely throughout the system. And I'm going to start with the sales manager interface. And as a sales manager, one of my roles is that I need to establish a plan, a sales plan. So I'm going to click on my main menu up here. I'm going to click on plan, and that's going to give me a list of plans. And this list is, our company's been using IncentViz, for example, for a number of years. So it's got a historical database or an account of all of the plans that we've used in the past. For demonstration purposes, I'm going to be focused on, well, let me first talk about, we can set up plans based on how you would want to incentivize a particular individual. So sometimes plans could be based on territory, plans could be based on product codes or product lines. In this case, maybe we've got outside sales group as opposed to an inside sales group. So I might set up one or more plans depending on, again, how you want to incentivize an individual or group of individuals if they're working within a team. So, and a person can be assigned more than one plan. So they can have quotas, that are maybe product line centric or region or territory centric, or as I mentioned earlier, maybe inside or outside based. Now, for today's demonstration, I'm going to focus on just this product code. It's a very simple, straightforward plan that will give you a good understanding of what the standard features are within the IncentViz application. So I've clicked on the 2022 product code plan, and I'm going to go into edit mode, which will allow me to look at all of the different values within the plan. So what we're doing, I've already established this plan, but it allows me to see the different options if I wanted to change anything, or if I'm creating a new plan from scratch, you'll get an indication of what the different values are going to be. So I've given my plan a title here. We're calling it the 2022 product code. And product codes in our definition is like a product line. So we're going to set up individual quotas based on product line underneath this product code plan. My status is currently active. I can, in the future, I can archive this or change to history once it has expired. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail here. Just know that the IncentViz application can handle some pretty complicated tree-based or inheritance-based multi-level payouts. So, for example, if you had 10% that you wanted to pay out to a hierarchical structure, so maybe a sales executive gets a portion of that 10%, a sales manager gets a portion, the sales department gets a portion, and then ultimately a sales agent gets a portion, you can set up different calculation levels to support that. Now, in this particular example, we're just going to use a single level calculation to keep it simple and straightforward. We'll give it again a shorthand description here, and because we could use these as binding agreements with our sales force or even with an outside party, we've got the opportunity here to provide an extended description to set the time fence on when this is going to be an active plan. We've got a start date and an end date, and that essentially establishes the header definition of our 2022 product code sales plan. Now, once I get the header defined, I'm going to assign people to it. Now, these people have already been set up in the system. These are specifically are going to be employees for our demonstration here. And I'm going to focus today on just this RMW, which we're going to call RMW Rodney Watkins. So once we get this plan header established, we're going to assign people to it so that they are going to be responsible or have sales responsibilities underneath this plan. Now, once I've assigned the people, which I would have done, I could either have done that in my previous screen, or I can click the add new record here and add additional people to my plan. I'm just going to take a quick look, or actually I'll move on down through here, and we will be establishing quotas. So, this is just the generic definition up above here. Now we're going to assign quotas. And within our organization, or at least for the sample company that we're talking about here, we've got 3 different product codes. We've got accessories, we've got consumables, and we've got machines. And we want our people that are assigned to this sales plan to sell all 3. Well, they could sell all 3, or maybe, well, actually, in this case, they do sell all 3. But we can also be assign quotas uniquely to an individual. But again, in this case, keeping it simple, all 3 people are going to get assigned a quota. We're going to set up a generic quota, if you will, or a template for each one of these. And I'm just going to click on accessories. We're going to focus on the accessory quota for today's purposes. And so when I click on that link, it's going to take me into the form that allows me to manipulate or define what that quota is going to be for the accessories product code or for the accessories product line. And again, I'm just going to click my edit button. Allows me to look at some of the values or modify the values if I want to. We know that within our product code sales plan, we've got 3 product codes: the accessories, the consumables, and the machines. We're now just looking at the accessories portion of that. This quota is going to be assigned in this particular case to all people. So this is my generic template that I can assign the quota that I would use by default to assign anyone that would be participating or assigned a quota within the sales plan. I can uniquely build a quota for a particular individual, or I can give that individual a starting point. They can inherit the standard quota, whatever that quota is going to be. And then I could actually, and then you'll see in Rodney's case down here, I've overridden the default quota amount, which is $750,000. And just by going into this particular form as part of the initial setup, I could override that and set whatever quota amount I wanted specifically for Rodney. As I mentioned in the PowerPoint presentation, quotas and sales plans can be set up to be processed annually, quarterly, or monthly. Now, once my quota has been established, which in Rodney's case, it's going to be an accessory quota for $500,000. Again, we're just looking at the generic definitions here, but we know within each one of these quotas, we can uniquely assign individual values based on that individual person. Now, once the quota is established, we're going to define how much credit they get when something is sold within that product code. So we call those quota credits. They're going to get credit for something they sell. So again, sticking with the accessory product code, I'm going to drill into that. I'm going to go into edit mode again, just so we can see some of these editable fields. And so I'm looking at the defining the credit that will be applied when a salesperson sells something within this product code of accessories. So again, we're going to apply this credit to all people within the plan, and we can dictate what is the source of the credit. So the credit can be gained or earned by something that the individual sells. It could be if this individual is part of a team. The team gets credit when a transaction is processed that qualifies for an accessory credit. Because we work with the service orders within CloudSuite Industrial, a person who worked on a service order could get credit, a utilization bonus, for example, or utilization compensation. Or again, if that person worked on a team with on a service order, they would get credit for that. And then finally, sometimes there's just other reasons that we just want to give somebody credit for a sale or participation for a transaction that occurs, and we would nominate that just as other. Now, for again, today's purposes, we're just going to focus on anything that got sold. We're going to calculate that value of what the credit is based on the price of the item. We could also calculate it on the margin if we wanted to, or it could be some other value, a custom field that we talked about earlier. So we could specify that custom field here by specifying class, and then it's going to prompt us to identify what field is that person getting credit for. So in this case, I mentioned before, we could be doing rebates, we could actually skip, for whatever reason, paying somebody for something if a particular condition is met. But again, for today's purposes, we're going to base our credit earned on price that gets sold. The transactions that can generate these credits are invoices. Typically, we're going to check all of these boxes. The invoice itself will generate the credit, the quota credit earned. But then if an invoice is credited, meaning we returned money to a customer, that means the salesperson would lose that value, or that value would be negated from the original invoice total. And the same thing for a debit. If a debit memo was processed against this invoice, that would increase the amount that a person could earn. So you have the ability to stipulate which of these transactions you want to drive the credit earning. We could earn the credit by the invoice total itself, or we could go down to the line item detail, and that's really a reporting preference and the decision that gets made during the implementation process. We have a couple of dates here. We could either the original transaction date, which might be the order date, or service order performed date, services performed, labor performed might be a transaction date, or the actual invoice date. Again, that's what we're going to be driving in this particular demo. We talked about the quota that we set up earlier, and this is related specifically to the accessories quota. So we're associating, we're building that structure between the sales plan, the sales quota, and the quota credit that they're going to get by populating these fields. And again, because of the flexibility, it allows us to mix and match and get really creative, because sometimes companies do have what we call creative compensation plans. You know, this flexibility allows us to fit in most cases and provide the functionality needed to support their business rules. Now, here is what the credit is all about. You know, we're going to, for a direct sale, we're going to pay 100% of that, or the person's going to earn 100% credit value, if you will. Now, if we're doing splits, or if we're doing that that tree structure where I talked about earlier, where you might have multiple levels, we might override that value, and rather than it being 100% credit, maybe they only get 50% credit if they're doing a split, or some other percentage. But again, for today's purposes, we're going to keep this simple, and they're going to get 100% credit for anything that qualifies. Again, we're going to give it a time fence when this credit is applied for the start and end date. And then finally, we're matching our description here. Now, for the condition to be met to earn the credit, here's where we're starting to define and using or leveraging that CSI data. So within CSI, there's an item table, and within that item table, that a particular item record has a product code, and you set the value of that product code. And if that product code equals accessories, then this person is going to earn 100% credit for the value, the price value, which we talked about up here. They're going to get 100% credit for that price value. Now, that's not what they're going to get paid. They're just getting credit for it. And we're going to set up a payment definition here momentarily. We're going to go back one more level. And now that we've set up our quota credit, which we just talked about, we're going to set up our quota payments. And again, we're going to focus on accessories. I'm going to drill down into that. I'm going to go into edit mode, and that enables our field so you can see. And again, we're building layers here. So we've identified the sales plan. What portion of the sales plan are we focused on? We're focused on the accessories portion of that product code plan, and we've established they're going to get a percentage of quota credit for anything that falls or qualifies meets the condition of an accessory. So to perform that calculation, we have to set up the rules that will be followed. we've got two options here. We've got the stepped option or we've got tiered option. We're going to be using the stepped option. And what that does is that allows us to provide somewhat of a stair-step formula calculation. So when a person is earning credits, we're going to compare their accumulated credit amount to their quota. So starting out, when they haven't sold anything, they're going to be at 0. But as they start to sell items that fall into the accessory category or the accessory product code, they're going to start to accumulate quota credit. Well, we're going to compare that quota credit to this table. And from 0 to 50% of total credit attainment, they're going to earn 5%, or we're going to calculate the amount that they're going to get paid 5% of that 100% of that price of the item that's sold. I know it sounds confusing, but the system actually does all that for you, and you don't have to worry about those spreadsheets and figuring out what that formula should be. When that salesperson continues to build their quota, earn quota credit, once they exceed 50% of that quota, then we're going to move them into a new bucket. They're going to then begin to earn 6% on anything they sell. And they will continue to earn 6%, or the calculation, the commission payment will be 6% of that 100% of the price of that item that's sold. And that will continue up to 100%. Once they exceed 100%, then they're going to move into another pay percentage, or their pay percentage is going to increase to 7%. Now, again, this is just one example. We can get very creative in terms of either doing this stepped approach, or we can also take a tiered approach. And in a tiered approach, that's typically used for bonuses. So once a particular tier is met, let's say 100% of their quota, we're just looking for a single value that they've met. And once that value's been met, then they qualify. The condition has been met, and a payment calculation would get generated. Again, for the payment time fence, we've got a start and end date. We're going to use the same payment calculation for all people. Again, we could set one up that is unique to an individual. We can override and set up that custom payment calculation if we need to. Again, we're associating this particular payment plan with the credit that's earned that falls under the quota of accessories for the product, this particular subgroup within the product code sales plan. So again, we're just building layers here, making sure our layers are aligned. Again, taking this configuration approach allows us to mix, match, and get really creative if we need to support the commission calculation rules within an organization. This next field is really important to some organizations, particularly those that pay or generate their commission payments once the invoice is paid in full. If your organization is like that and you only pay once the invoice has been paid, you're paying your commissions once the invoice has been paid, you're going to want to check this box. And it falls in by default. But some organizations may pay when the order is placed. And in that case, you'll simply turn that box off. And as soon as the transaction comes through, it's going to qualify and generate a commission payment. Now, in our case, for, again, demonstration purposes, we're going to make sure that that invoice is paid before we generate a payment, a commission payment. The earning periods, this was an annual sales plan, but as we talked about earlier, we could support quarterly or monthly sales plans. And also we're indicating here whether the amount is paid monthly, quarterly, or annually. And then finally, this is just a short description for reporting purposes that will show up on some of the other forms. Now I have a full definition of my sales plan. So I'm going to just go back until I get to my top level. I've got my entire sales plan generated or at least defined. And because, again, I mentioned this could be used as a binding agreement, I'm going to go look now at the plan itself. And I talked earlier that we're just going to focus on Rodney. So he is a participant within this particular sales plan, and I'm going to render his compensation plan. It's got the title, it's got the extended description, again, which might be some binding language with it, the person that's assigned to it. It's got the individual quotas. Now, we only developed a single quota for accessories, but you can see here, you can go through the same process if multiple quotas for different types of sales are to be assigned to different people, or for customers or vendors that, again, that might be receiving those rebates or those royalties. You'll notice here that it does reflect a $500,000 quota for the accessory category for Rodney, and if you'll remember, the other two people, they were $750,000. We kept it at the default. We set up when he does begin to earn credit for any product that's sold within the accessory product code line, he's going to get 100% of that value. And again, there's no splits going on here, but this gives you maybe a better understanding of why there's credit percentage that is specified between the quota itself and then the payout. So once he does, once that, as we talked about, once that invoice gets paid, it's going to trigger a payment calculation to be performed. He's going to get 100% of that earning, and then we're going to multiply based on where he's at in his quota attainment structure for the year, because this is an annual payout, or excuse me, an annual quota. Based on where he's at, the system will automatically determine whether or not he gets 5, 6, or 7% of that price on that item for that accessory that qualifies for a commission payment. All right, so we're going to go back. We've gotten through the setup of our sales plan, so I'm still acting as the sales manager. But in this case, I'm actually going to go into the sales manager dashboard. And sales managers typically responsible for viewing quotas, looking at sales performance, or viewing payments, because salesperson's calling up, they want to know, when they're going to get paid or if it's ready to be paid. So sales manager has the ability to look at both payments as well as quotas. We're gonna focus on, for this particular point, just the quotas. So I'm going to click the quota button. It's already got me in the quota view here. I'm going to override a couple of the field values. My start date is this year, and I'm going to have a year length. But you'll notice there's no quota specified here, so I'm not really analyzing anything yet. So I'm going to do the pull down, and this shows me the different quotas that I've set up for my different sales plans. So the one, again, we've been focused on are our accessories. I pulled up the quotas for people that fall under the sales plan. And lo and behold, here are the 3 people that we assigned earlier, Rodney being one of them. And if you'll remember, we have, Rodney's only got 500,000 versus 750,000 for a quota assigned to him. If I click on this cell, it's going to activate that particular accumulated value and show me that for this quota, he's earned $19,165.41. So this table down here provides the details that total up to that amount. Now we're only looking at one of 3 pages, so there's 71 items here that represent that $19,165,000. So that allows me to see how that Rodney is performing year to date, for example, on his quota. Now, the other thing I can do while I'm in here, and this is consistent functionality. Anytime that we're in one of these grid views, I can sort ascending, descending. I can turn off or turn on columns that I want to display. And then also I can filter down my data. So one of the things that we are going to be doing with this Rodney demo is that we're just going to be focusing on the month of August. So I can simply come in here, and in the column I can filter down on that invoice date. I could filter down on specific orders. I can filter down on specific customers. So I do have some flexibility here in terms of what I want to view when I'm doing this quota analysis by the people that have been assigned to it. All right, so let's take a look at the role of a salesperson. So I'm just going to go back to my menu. I'm going to select sales. That's going to not log me in, but I'm going to take on the persona of a salesperson. And again, because I have super user privileges, I can see all salespeople within the organization. Sometimes accounting needs this access. Excuse me. Sometimes the sales manager does. If I am the individual, I can only see my data. I will not be able, you can restrict down the data that only the particular individual would have access to see. I've come in as a salesperson, and what are salespeople interested in? Not only selling, but they're also probably more interested in when am I going to get paid? So we talked about the quotas, very similar functionality for a salesperson. Let's go look at the payments. So I'm looking at the payments. Again, I'm going to filter this down to Rodney. So let's think that or simulate that I'm logged in as Rodney. So I've got a little bit of a dashboard application here, and I'm going to see kind of what's happened over the course of the entire year. So I'm just going to take this out from beginning of the year all the way through, and I've got a little histogram here, bar chart here that shows me these values. So it will show me visually what have I earned, what's been paid, what's unpaid, and what's ready to pay. You'll notice there's a lot of red here. So accounting is behind, obviously. We're depending on where you are in the year, but you can see that only one of, or actually 2 months are we up to date here, depending on where you're at in the year. The rest of these values are earned but unpaid, and we're going to talk about and walk through a good example of that. We're going to focus just on the month of August. So we're just going to filter down. We're going to look at the month of August. We're going to look at 1 month, and we're going to kind of interrogate what these values look like. So again, for Rodney, we're looking at a dashboard, his earnings, or excuse me, what his payments that are available for the month of August, because that's what he's interested in. Well, when am I going to get paid this month? So he's able to pull this up, and it's telling him that based on those invoices that have been paid, you've earned $159.92. Now, of those, we actually, I'm going to back out here. I need to undo a payroll transaction and clean up and then return to Rodney. There we go. So he's earned the 159, but he hasn't been paid that yet. So the system's telling him you've earned it, but you haven't been paid. And when we do pay you, or when the company pays you, you're only going to get paid $119.92. And he's kind of scratching his head and thinking, what happened to that other $40? I'm supposed to get paid $159.92, but ready to be paid is only $119.92. Well, if you look at the detail down below, this detail adds up to the $159.92, but there's a $40 amount in here, and somebody has put it on hold. And so the system knows and can be interrupted and even intercept a particular payment right before it's ready to be released. And that happens occasionally for various number of reasons. So in this case, maybe the customer, they paid their invoice because it's qualified, but maybe something happened. They accidentally paid the invoice, or they paid the invoice and called in and said, hey, look, hey, I'm going to, put this on hold. Well, we don't want to pay that salesperson if there's something wrong with that order, there's something wrong with that invoice, and we were able to catch it before the payment actually got released and the check was cut. So that just kind of gives you an example of what the salesperson is able to view when they're looking at their particular payments. Now, with all of the data, not only in a visual format, a person is able to generate a statement. And again, we're just looking at Rodney here. We've got a couple of different versions. We're just going to go with the standard output in this case. We're filtering it down based on the time fence here that we're establishing. And also we can look at either all data or just paid data or just unpaid data. And sometimes, depending on the number of transactions, these reports can get pretty large. So when we click the view report, it's actually going to launch a background process, because again, you could be dealing with hundreds or even thousands of transactions. And if you're either a sales manager or an accounting department and you're launching a report for multiple people, this could take a few minutes to process. So we launch that in the background. When that report is complete, it's actually going to send the user an email. So Rodney was interested in his commission statement. So what we have here is the commission statement for Rodney. It's for that 2022 product code plan. And then because he was assigned quotas for each of the different product codes, he's got an accessory category here. He's got consumables, and he's got machines. Now, we only built the plan, or we only reviewed the plan for accessories, but just keep in mind that a very similar structure was set up for anything that he sold that was under the consumable product code or the machine product code. So the system will automatically aggregate all of that information into a single commission statement. Again, we filtered it down just for the month of August. It shows Rodney what the basis amount is for the calculation. What was sold, what was the invoice total, what did he earn credit for, and then given that credit percentage, now he's going to get paid 100%, but if he's doing a split with someone, or the system was set up to give him a lower credit percentage, that multiplier or that coefficient would be used in the formula. The quota earned is the multiplication of these two values. So he's actually indeed going to earn 100% quota credit on that. But then we're just going to pay him 5%, because if you remember that tiered structure that we set up, he apparently is somewhere between 0 and 50% of total quota attainment. So he's going to get 5% on that quota earned, which is in this case $17.01. We total all of that information up, go to the bottom of his report, and we are ready to pay $119 because he's got that one transaction that's been placed on hold. So this particular report typically gives the salesperson everything they're looking for. It's something they can run real time, anytime that they log in and want to know their sales performance. So that takes a lot of workload off of the sales management department if they're managing spreadsheets, or using some other system, and the same thing for accounting. They don't have to worry about doing that, and it makes the salesperson feel better because they can do this again real time, not have to wait till the end of a period to get that information. All right, I'm going to now move to the role of accounting. The accounting is responsible for processing the payroll transactions. If I'm looking here, once I select accounting, it's going to take me to the accounting dashboard. I've come in and I'm going to set some of my dates here, again, just to give you an indication of what the dashboard functionality looks like. So I'm going to look at the full year. Very similar, but this tells me from an accounting perspective, what's been earned, what's been paid, but also, what's been unpaid. This really kind of reflects what accounting's background is. What they need to be processing some payroll transactions here because they've got monies that are owed to people but haven't been paid yet. And again, the system tells them what those pay amounts are going to be. All right, so let's go look at we're going to begin the processing of commission payments now. So this menu is enabled. Again, I'm the super user. If this was accounting, this would be enabled. If this was someone other than accounting, they would not have access to the quota credits or the payments to do these reviews. So we're going to go into the payments themselves. And I'm again going to filter down to my August group. And then I'm going to, just for demonstration purposes, filter that down. Or do it contains, actually. That was okay. And this just shows me the page of entries, again, for Rodney. I filter that down, and you'll notice that this particular entry here is on hold. So I, as accounting, have the ability to come in here and put any of these entries on hold if I want to, and then I also have the ability to add some notes. So as I mentioned earlier, maybe as an example, the customer paid accidentally, an RMA was issued, and the product's being returned. So not only do we want to put this on hold, but ultimately we're going to want to delete that particular payment transaction because the system automatically generates it for us. All right, let's move on through and let's actually generate the actual payroll. So I'm going to move. Well, one other thing I'll do before we get to payroll is just mention that we also can set up bonuses. So the bonus form here acts very similar to the other ones. And given the time fence, it will actually provide to you a window into any bonuses that have been met. So we can scroll through here from either a sales management perspective or an accounting perspective. And once that bonus has been attained, it can be flagged for approval, and then we can either approve it or reject that, and it will record that feedback, whether or not it has been paid or included in a payroll yet, and then also keeps track of that bonus history for us. So that's another feature that really haven't spent much time talking about, but if you got a one-time bonus that needs to be set up, again, it can be done by individual, by team, can be an override. Many different scenarios can be used for bonusing. All right, so let's go back to and now start to process our payroll. So again, keeping this simple, we're actually going to create, these are the previous payrolls that were processed. And if you'll remember, we had a payroll, we didn't have any commissions due in January or February because we've already processed those. We had, although I didn't hover, we did do a small payroll processing in March, so there's still quite a bit that's due. And again, we're going to just keep it simple, and we're going to create a payroll batch just for Rodney and just for that August earnings that Rodney qualified for or earned. So we're just going to give that a title, call it the August 22 RMW payroll batch. I'm going to save that. And then I can either, if I wanted to do a unique payroll run, just a one-off, I can actually create, by hitting the new button, I can create a payment. And I can associate that with a person and a quota and a credit. This could be not system generated, but just a one-off check. And obviously, sometimes that happens. In this case, I'm going to let the system tell me what needs to be paid. So I'm going to generate this, and again, I'm going to use the filtering capabilities. I'm just going to specify Rodney for that August timeframe, and it's just going to be for that 2022 product code. I'm going to generate that, and lo and behold, there's my $119.92. If you remember, the overall amount was actually $159.92. By clicking on this button over here, it's going to provide me some drill down to detail, and it's going to show me the actual payments that make up that $119. Now, once I generate my payroll, there may be other payrolls I want to add for Rodney, and I could actually hit my generate button again, and if Rodney participated in other plans, so not only maybe does he participate in the product code, maybe I assigned a territory quota to him as well. Well, I can run this again just for the territory sales plan now, and it's going to filter down on Rodney and a particular time fence. And when I click that generate button, it would create another entry in here if he qualified for any earnings, and any commission payments would be met and generated. So you can do this. This allows a lot of flexibility in terms of how accounting wants to batch their payroll as it relates to their commissions. Once we generate that, again, we can hit the payroll details button. That's going to generate a payroll statement. And again, it's going to run in the background. It's going to email the person that generated it. It can also email the person that is represented on the report. So I'll jump out there real quick and see that the particular, when I view that report, it can be for particular individuals or the department. The report itself specifies, again, now we're looking at payroll details, not quota details, payroll. So these are the actual transactions that qualified, they had been paid. These are the basis amount. This is the quota credit. This is the quota earned, the amount that was calculated. And if we scroll to the bottom here, we'll see that there's $119.92 that will be sent to the payroll system and included in the next payroll run. We'll talk about when I click this finalize button. So when I finalize this, we were able to generate the report with the details, but also when I click finalize, I have the option here to email that commission report to the users. So any user that falls, any person that falls in here, if they have, which they should have an email configured in the system, they're going to get a copy of that, of those payment details. So you don't have to worry about, creating those manually or them, asking for them. They can be sent. You can send that report to yourself. You can send a report to the managers. And then if I actually click the finalize button, it's going to do, it's actually going to create what's called the commission due records. and Infor CloudSuite Industrial. Those are records that are sent back into CSI and then are queued up to be included in a payroll run if you're using the CSI payroll module. If you're not using the payroll module, then most companies just take the report that's generated, they provide that to the payroll department, or if the accounting person is responsible, they then use the information from the spreadsheet to manually enter, if they're submitting either a spreadsheet, or if they got a portal that they just type information in, they'll use that information off of the report to submit that for payroll processing. Now let's go back and we'll look at, again, Rodney and his payments. And again, we're just going to filter down on the 1 month for August. And we now see that he earned $159.92. He was paid $119.92. And there's still an outstanding amount of $40 that's unpaid due to that invoice that was on hold. And this concludes the overview demo of IncentViz for Infor CloudSuite Industrial. I really thank you for your interest, and if you have any questions or would like to delve deeper into other features of the software, please contact your Infor business partner, or you can also contact Single Source Systems direct at success@singlesrc.com.